Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 555. I'm your host Patrick. I will be doing this show by myself this week because scheduling, and we did this really cool thing that we'll talk about later that took longer than expected and took up my news broadcasting time. So this will be recorded and will come out. And I apologize for that, but that's just how things go sometimes. This week's screenshot: Grand Baron Hubert Bartholomew Kuberdell III Esquire captains a flagship in the 411th screenshot of the week. Thanks, Cindrus, for sending in this week's screenshot. An appropriate gnomish name, to be sure. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website, DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next weekend. You can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website, DDOCast.com, with our calendar. We'll continue to try to get live shows out, but this time of year is really challenging for me. On the podcast this week, we have a great conversation to start, discussion topic. We're going to be talking about Reaper mode and its current status and kind of update and look at it. And just kind of talk about a bunch of different questions about Reaper mode. How's it doing? Do we like where it is? These kind of things. We had a really great discussion, and I think you'll really enjoy part one of that. But because of how long that went, I was not able to get the news recorded earlier and with anybody. So here we are. There's not a lot of news, though. We'll start with game news. The first thing of note, they have now granted the VIP time extension to the remaining eligible players who had not properly received the extension. This is from the database server work that went long and took a couple days to get up. They're sorry it took as long as it has to get this done, but the process hit a few snags. A reminder that all eligible VIP players will have had 4 days added to their subscription end date. We also got some updates on. We actually had a patch, update 41.5, that corrected game client performance issues that were being caused by several spells. They also had several other game crashing issues that were corrected and fixed a couple of animation stuff. And then on Lemania, we actually had update 42 preview 2. So this was looking at Masterminds of Sharn. There were a couple things that they did do some work on. A lot of kind of mostly fixing stuff. Some animation issues with tieflings, the innate fire resistance and infernal resistance properly getting their values to update without needing to relog. Tieflings the non-scoundrel tieflings were no longer using fiddles. Some stuff there. There were a couple things, though. The spell spawn screen no longer scales its number of targets badly via cast level, and instead affects all allies in the area of effect. Also, Druid Tier 1 of Force of Nature in Tier 5 of Nature's Protector now grants the following, in addition to its current effect. Your attunement to nature is emboldened. Your druidic oath is no longer broken by wearing metal armor or shields. That'll really open up a lot of options there. Although it is a Tier 5 enhancement, so you do have to get up that high. Also, Wail of Banshee now has its signature sound effect back, to much rejoicing, and the second dance for tieflings was added. Other stuff that was kind of, again, pretty small. They do now have a UI. The character sheet UI will now display your offhand double strike underneath double strike. So if you're interested in what that is, we can now look at that, which is kind of neat. They also abbreviated class names and moved all 4 class fields into the same line, which will help be able to see everything on the character UI sheet. Some other stuff that came up this week. Weapon special attacks. So there were some questions about some stuff, and specifically, there's the special attacks usually have a range version and a melee version. Why can't they just be both? So according to the post, the understanding is the back end requires any attack to either be ranged or melee. There's no middle ground where an attack button can be clicked and the game can gracefully detect which type of weapon you are wielding and then make an attack with the appropriate style. To avoid this restriction, they can use spellcasting system to make what visually appears to be a weapon-esque strike, think Fan of Knives from Vishtani, but that makes the damage completely detached from your weapon and any effects that impact your weapon attacks. The point is, the desire for a single button that allows you to attack with your bird, regardless of weapon style, will be cool, but it's not currently supported by the back-end core combat systems of DDO. Boo. The other thing of note is regarding to the changes for Amber Temple. Flimsy Firewood posted an initial post, and then he came back and said this was not the greatest of posts he has issued, and he apologized. He was trying to be trying to take a different tact and trying to have a little bit of an experiment, and ultimately it pretty much blew up in his face, which he conceded and apologized for. However, he also said that they're going to change Amber Temple again. So what they're going to do is they're going to most of the Elite and Reaper-only mobs will be removed, and Madame Ava is now hidden deeper within the quest, and you need to find her to finish it. Her location is not random. Probably this will be live in time for Sharn release, barring unforeseen circumstances. It's a little unclear to me if Madame Ava was only going to be hidden deeper in Elite and Reaper modes, but we'll have to see there. I didn't see a definitive answer on that. Bonus days. Through today, the time that I'm recording this, so it's already gone. There was 30% challenge rewards through April 21st. Store sales through April 25th. You can get Adventure and Advance. That is 20% off of select Adventure packs, Quest XP elixirs. And there's a weekly coupon code that will get you a light SP potion times 10 with a coupon code SPELLPOINTS now through April 25th. There's also a couple cloak codes that behind on again because we missed last week. If you would like to get more cloaks for the anniversary event, you can use the code Made by Spiders and Giant Yark. Those will each get you another slice of cake with which you can get a new cloak. Talking about community news, I got 2 chronicles this week to go through. The 328th chronicle. The High Lords will be hosted Abbott teaching raids. And don't forget, you can check those out on Voodu's YouTube page. He does usually post all of that stuff. So if you're interested in how the Abbott works, you can still catch it, even though you might have missed it. Strimtom also did an interview with SSG. It wasn't really the kind of interview that was really informational relative to the game, but it was kind of a fun little thing he did with the devs while he was there. The comment, where do the eggs come from during the Festival of the Traveler? That would be the egg plane. Little known plane that most people don't travel to because of its boredom. The guild for the week, Creation's Bane on Kyber, is open to all players, whether you're new to the game, die-hard veterans, or just want to be part of a community. There's a place for you in Creation's Bane. They would love to meet you and make you part of the wonderful community. You can take a look at their forum post. For fan site news, we got a shout out for DDOCast 554, which is looking at past life prioritization, racial lives. We also got shout outs for Brock and Friends with 33% more friends soon. You can also listen to DDO Players News, episode 218. D&D Night on DDO Stream. Bard Life with Doug Glendower. Enter the Necropolis from BioBreak was a blog post talking about his foray into the Necropolis area. You can also check out week 117 of raids for Mickey's Delirium. And you can watch a Reaper level 30 with Inquisitor on Dia de Reaper con Hibernium. And you can watch Warforged is hell with DDOPL, folks. The 329th screenshot covered High Lords of Melchior had a trivia event today. I do not know if he's going to post that one. The comment for the week, what do you think you would find in the trash barrels of the cogs in Sharn? Presumably, I will find a bunch of crummy loot, and maybe I'll find just something actually helpful. The guild for the week, Densetsu no Samurai, which is legendary samurai. It's a cheerful, international-based 174 guild on Wayfinder. They are more a kind of friend and family guild, not an XXL guild. The guild has been around for several years. They've experienced longtime players and newer players. The active members make regular dungeon raids and more. They're happy to help other players or teach them stuff about the game. Join them for a DDO adventure beyond the leveling, prone to falling off cliffs, running into traps, dead but still look sexy, solve, and learning, as well as mature, helpful, and funny guild chats. Every friendly player is welcome. They're a drama-free and respectful guild. It's not an obligation to be online regularly at certain times. In addition, you also get access to their Daedalin Kraken, which has some great buffs, and a bar with beer, honey, wine, juice, and food. You can check out their forum post. It's about as long as guild hall I've seen in a long while. Also in the fan site news, you can watch part 17 of Den of the Kobold Brothers with Gamilio Dan. You can read Fresh Starts by Even Notes, Wicked Wednesday, spoilers, Sharn preview with Top Hat Tolab. Free DO had an episode, Don't Get Silly Now with Psycho Blonde. You can read about the Fire of Dragon from Return to the House of Grouse. Damsels of DDO had an episode. You can also watch Warforged Games with DDO PL. Shoe Cobbled a Deepwood Elven Stalker with Technical 13 Shoemaker. You can watch Fridays on Ice with Bachelor Lore and some more Dia de Reaper Con Hibernium. And you can also watch You Only Get What You Give with Bard Life and Doug Glenn Dower. D&D night on DDO stream. Last weekend we had D&D night for D&D Kasplat. So it's the group that I DM with the Damsels and a couple other folks. We had a lot of fun. It is still, don't forget to tune in on 7 p.m. Eastern time on Sundays for D&D night on DDO stream. There's a bunch of folks doing a bunch of really fun things there with that. And DDO Kasplat, we'll be doing Curse of Strahd this Tuesday, and then after that, we're going to be taking a break for a while. We should be coming back for Season 5 in a couple months. Lightning post. We did have a couple people write in. Fuzzy Duck wrote in. It says, first rule for racial past lives would be to worry less about being the most optimal class race combo each time, and instead pick a class or a handful of classes you enjoy playing for the whole spread from 1 to 20, rather than that it comes together at level 15 or it's a slog from 15 to 20 types of builds. Yeah, that's a good advice for just about anything. Like, build something that you're going to enjoy playing, especially you're going to run out a couple of times. Personally, he loves running Master Maker, Artificer, and Heroic, cheap AoE healing from level 1, and a mechanic machine gun. So he uses that for a lot of them. Definitely agrees with doing the worst, quote, worst races relative to your chosen classes first. That way, as you unlock more racial action points, you can use them on relevant abilities, giving a huge jump in power at lower levels. Like for an Artificer, gnome racial things are amazing. So it'll be one of the last ones he'd do. If he was running a Warlock, he'd probably go Drow as one of the last ones. As soon as he hit level 3, he could have Darkfire, which does 50% of damage of Stricken from Soul Eater with half of the cooldown time, in addition to whatever other tree he was focused in. And another positive for Drow beyond Shuriken expertise is Fairy Fire. Temporary displacement, dispel, making true seeing unnecessary for dealing with some mobs for the whole group, and it also destroys unbreakables. It's a good tip. I like that tip. Disjukes said if we do get Underdark Drow setup race, they better have that sacrifice ability so he can kill his party members for full health. I have a feeling that while that's a fun idea, that's not actually going to be a thing. There you go. So thanks for joining me this week, for listening to DDOcast. We'll try to get some more people in for the news next week, but like I said, this time of year is just really crazy. But do stick around. I think you'll really enjoy our Reaper status update, part 1 with Voodu and Nimvind and Arkat. We had a great discussion. It was really long. We had a lot of fun. And a lot of great points brought up by everyone. It was a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoyed. Thanks to everyone for listening to the show, and thanks to all the contributors for DDOcast, and to Standing Stone Games and Wizards of the Coast, and to Cyberreaders for hosting the podcast. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOcast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. If you have a DDO-themed webpage, or you Twitch DDO, and you'd like to be featured on our website, email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can hit us up at ddocast.com for our show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be a part of the show, if you have a comment on this episode, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great comments on this because we're talking about some fun stuff, or if you have a question you'd like to hear us answer, a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, or you just want to say hi, leave us a comment. Email us at ddocast@gmail.com. I really can't wait to see what some people have to say about some of the stuff we're talking about with Reaper Mode. You can also find us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates. I'm at DDOCast on Twitter. So stay tuned for part 1 of our discussion on Reaper status and where it currently is. Hello and welcome back to DDOcast. We're going to start a new discussion today. We're going to be talking about Reaper, sort of debate style, less organized debate style than we used to do. But we're going to get into how Reaper is currently doing in the ecosystem of DDO and kind of our thoughts on that and a bunch of the stuff that comes along with that. We've got a bunch of guests today. This should be a lot of fun. I know everyone here is really excited to be talking about this. We've got Arkat.
Good morning.
Nimvind.
Merry Nimbus.
And Voodu, or Gingerspyce, today.
Hey, everyone.
And yeah, so we're going to be looking at Reaper and kind of part of the impetus of this is, what was it, a month ago? Arkat was on the show. I know, I don't remember who else was on there, but we kind of got sidetracked. I started talking about Reaper, and it was very quickly evident that we had some differing opinions a little bit, but it was a really interesting discussion. So we kind of came away from that like, we need to do a bigger discussion about this and where Reaper is right now and what it looks like in DDO, and some other stuff with that. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna this we've already been talking about this may end up needing to be like, we're gonna cut this into multiple segments for the segment portion of the show, but this may end up being something we come back and revisit again in a couple weeks, just because we may run out of time today to talk about all the stuff that we're kind of thinking about talking about. I do have a couple of questions and stuff that will kind of help frame the discussion, and we'll kind of see where it goes and stuff. Right. So, let's just start here. Let's just kind of go around the table real quick and kind of give people an idea of what does our experience in Reaper look like. By which I mean, like, do we run it a bunch? Are you running R10s all over the place? And all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to start with. And Voodu, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I really like Reaper mode. Not that there wouldn't be things I would tweak about it, but as far as like where I'm at, it's to me it's all Reaper all the time, and Nimvind is part of my regular crew, and we're at a point where like R5 is easy. In fact, we're actually working on a video series right now on my YouTube channel called Reaper Life 3, where we're trying to demonstrate that, because we feel like so much of the community is still stuck at that R1 at elite streak level instead of doing like your Reapers at base normal level. And we're trying to show you that the community that not only can you do them at base normal level, but you can actually work up to a point where like you can basically Zerg R5s. And so the whole video series, like we're basically doing R5s the whole way and showing like you can blitz this with a variety of builds, not a bunch of warlocks and monks. And we're doing it even without a healer, that you can work up to that point of Zerging R5s, variety of classes, and no dedicated healer. Now, as far as like where I'm at, like most of the content, if we were doing it outside of that video project, we would be stepping up a little bit more. Once we get past like level 10-ish for the remainder of heroics, we're doing like a lot of R6s and R7s, but maybe even like some R8s and giant hold and stuff, but not a whole lot of R10s. Like that's still like for us, like R10s is still kind of a special event. Like we got a full 6-person crew, all the roles are covered, we've been doing well for the last few quests. Hey, let's step it up to R10. So that's about where I'm at. with Reaper mode right now. And that's with, Gingerspyce has 77 Reaper points, Voodu has 62, I think. So give you a feeling, where I'm at with Reaper points, because that's an important part of getting to that level of feeling comfortable with doing higher skulls.
And when we start talking about challenge, I think this is going to be a fun discussion. Be interesting to where we go. Nimvind, why don't you kind of dovetail off of that since you run with Voodoo a lot?
Well, currently I'm running a Reaper series on my channel too, which is actually just an extension of his series. Well, I guess on the live stream he would be below me. And I have 94 Reaper points. I tend to like to go, yeah, R5 is pretty slick for me. I would like to raise it up to R7 to R10 because I feel like that's kind of like where it gets a little challenging for me. It would be nice to get a little challenge, but it doesn't seem like a thing anymore to run Reaper. Reaper's kind of like where I'm at in the game, kind of. I guess you can say like there's no reason for me to go to Elite. Um, I
Sure.
don't. I'm pretty much feel better in Reaper mode than I do in Elite because of my Reaper points. So, you know, I pretty much what Voodoo said plus what I just said combined.
Arkat, what about you?
I'm not anywhere near these guys as far as numbers of Reaper points are concerned. And to sort of go along with that is, I also don't have, tons and tons of past lives. I'm not a TR person. I don't like to TR, but I'll do it if I need to. If there's a new build that I really want to try, then I'll TR one of my tunes and well, I'll try that. But as far as where I'm at Reaper wise, um, probably the most Reaper I do, Patrick, is with your DDOCast group, where we do Reaper 2, Reaper 3, occasional Reaper 4 on a fairly sub-optimized tune. So I can handle Reaper. I just don't really prefer it. The tune that I have that's got the most Reaper points is 9. That's the most Reaper points I have on any of my 18 or so cap tunes. And the rest of them are like 3 or 4. Some of them have 6 or 7. The Reaper game for me is just not is not appealing, mostly because you got to have it's very very heavily, or you have to have a heavy investment of past lives and so forth and so on, or you probably should. Maybe you don't have to, but you probably should in order to get through and not to bog down the other people with whom you're running.
Sure. So I primarily run Reaper. I don't tend to run really high skulls. And I think a large part of that, there's kind of two factors I think that really kind of push that for me. One is I tend to be someone who's more interested in. I tend to put more value on efficiency than I do on challenge most of the time that I'm playing. Because I try to balance those two, but really kind of what I'm probably trying to aim for maybe is like 75% efficiency, 25% challenge. Because I still find some stuff fun at that range, but I can kind of get through some of the stuff I'm trying to achieve a little faster. I think there's also a big part of how I play, and because of how my schedule changes and kind of ebbs and flows with work and various other things, it's always been really hard for me to keep up with groups that are kind of going through that zerging process a little bit more. Like the static group that we have with DDOCast works really well because it's just a fairly small chunk of time on a day that I can fairly easily set that time aside to do that. But outside of that, it's very difficult for me to have a if I was in a group that was like, okay, we're gonna TR together and cruise through stuff, we wouldn't be cruising like 2 weeks after the fact. We'd still be we wouldn't be at level 30 after starting level 1. Just because of all the things I'm trying to balance and stuff like that. So it's very hard for me to get those to find and really get in and keep up with a group that TRs at level 1 and end of the week they're up to level 30. Like I just can never seem to find the right cadence of a group to do that. So I think that has that kind of tendency. So I find myself throwing up LFMs and kind of getting random people in my group and kind of going through there and kind of having to navigate from that side of thing. I like Reaper from a lot of the standpoints of what it does and kind of I do enjoy pushing and then challenging every once in a while. It's not something I like to do every day kind of a thing though. So that kind of gives us a baseline of where we can all start from discussing, and people kind of know where we're coming from.
I'd like to contextualize my comments though a little bit more.
Sure.
Because High Lords of Malkier on Sarlona is a raiding guild, and so when I was talking about Reaper mode, I was talking about questing. So when it comes to raiding, like it's not uncommon for us to still do like Strahd on Legendary hard even. We do a lot of raids on Legendary Elite, but it's not like we're doing all Reaper raids. Like doing a raid even on R1 for us, like we want to make sure that we got everything covered. It's not a given that we're doing R1, and we actually just did our first R2 guild raid just like a couple weeks ago, and that was just Fire and Thunder Peak.
That's kind of interesting because and I have kind of a different experience with that because you guys are running a lot of high school Reaper stuff in questing. I tend to our guild is doing primarily Reaper raids. Like when we run a raid, we're usually running it on R1 at least. Killing time is still, sometimes it's usually like the newer a raid is, the more we're kind of oscillating between hard and Reaper 1. We rarely, if ever, do elite. If we're doing elite, the consensus is we should just be doing R1. And we'll talk about that more later. The relationship between elite and Reaper 1. But I think there's, we tend to be pushing ourselves in those raids a lot more. We are fairly, I don't know, would you call us we raid regularly. I'm not sure if that I would say we're necessarily a raiding guild, although I think a lot of our focus tends to be in doing raids, and particularly the less so kind of right now in our current cycle, really kind of pushing the boundaries of what can we run in terms of Reaper.
How many nights a week do you raid, and how many guild raids a week do you have?
We raid twice a week, and it's usually for 2 to 3 hours.
Okay,
so
it's a balance.
I would say the reason why I would probably lean towards calling us a raiding guild, and Arkat, feel free to jump in since you're in the guild too. There's a lot of focus on that, like in terms of guild energy and what people are building for is running raids.
Yeah, there's recently we seem to be siphoning off various folks from various other guilds who want to run endgame, and so they come to Lava Divers because we do raiding. So I think that's probably an accurate description.
And we've done stuff like we've completed Baba's Hut on R7.
Awesome.
I think we did R6 Strahd. Some people we've done R3 or 4 Killing Time. And like we've got a couple people that did like a 4-man like R2 Killing Time or something ridiculous like that.
Wow.
So there's a lot of interest in our guild of challenge and putting a lot of emphasis on challenge in those. It's not something we do all the time, but there's a definite interest in doing that and kind of pushing the boundaries of can we do this. That's a little harder for me personally because at a certain point I think you have to really. I build my characters with it in terms of a concept, and like this is what I want this character to do. I don't build characters and don't really have the capacity to like rebuild my character to like, okay, we're going to go do, like, I need to find a character to fit what we're doing. I don't build a character to do what we're doing, if that makes sense. Like, I don't have that kind of resources in terms of time and stones and heart. It just doesn't fit with how I'm playing the game, and it can really manage effectively. But
even though we have like scheduled raids literally every night of the week in High Lords, it's a different approach or mindset than what you're describing. Like, we're not trying to be like, oh, let's see what's the highest difficulty we can do. And when I lead a lot of the raids, and my feeling on that is, as far as difficulty, is like, I often err to the lower difficulty side, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that everybody gets a smooth completion, that it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to make this a res fest where everybody's having to drink a bunch of pots and dying a bunch. So I tend to err towards the lowest common denominator when we're doing raids. And like I said, the emphasis is kind of like community and fun when we're raiding, as opposed to trying to see what's the highest difficulty we can beat the raid on.
I definitely lean more in your direction of, if I've got the star, like, the goal here is to complete the raid. Like, unless we've all agreed that we're gonna, like, it's like one of those days we're really gonna challenge ourselves. I tend to err on the side of let's complete it.
I avoid raids completely. Mostly because I had this mentality I got like 5 years ago, where like, if I'm doing my past lives, and if I get my TR cache filled with all the best freaking raid stuff, and by the time I'm done with all my past life, I have to delete all this fantastic raid stuff just to replace it with some
Mm-hmm.
fantastic raid stuff. So like, I don't even know what my end build's gonna be. Like, I have a feeling, but like, I also, TRing so much, I found some builds that I'm like, oh, this build is an end game build. You know what I mean? This build will be better than my build that I want. So I don't. So like, why gear up for this? Why save all this swashbuckling bard stuff if I might end up being a shuriken thrower? Like,
I already answered that question for you, because I've been trying to get Nimvind in more raids, and I'm trying to
Sure.
tell him, like, you're gonna want those threads of fate, okay? You're gonna want those those raid runes. You're gonna want those
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff, and that doesn't matter. That's totally separate from the loot. You can buy good stuff with that, and I'm worried that Nimvind's gonna get all his past lives done, and he's gonna go, oh man, I don't have any threads of fate to buy all
which
these cool things.
which is the fuel that's gonna keep me in this game once I get all the past lives.
There you
You know
go.
what I
Okay,
mean? Like,
fair
I'm gonna get
enough.
all. My according to my paperwork that I keep, I'm gonna have like over 110 Reaper points. I'm gonna have all the past lives and nothing else to do. So bring on the threads, bring on the raids. Then, till then, I don't need to be the best. I'm not a, you know what I mean? Like, I just need to focus on one thing at a time.
Before we get too far off that, let's bring it back into, let's kind of go back to Reaper mode. Because raids is another thing entirely. But we will bring raids in because it's part of running in Reaper. So the first question I just want to kind of start off with is, does Reaper mode achieve its design goals?
No, because as what I've been hearing from several, and it is not actually working 100% as intended.
Well, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. But just to kind of give people an idea of the design goals, and I was trying to find kind of a better idea of this, but the idea is to provide a new challenge for tough adventurers. Reaper difficulty, adds scaling, right? So you can go through. There's between 1 and 10 skulls. So, the idea being that here's a more difficult mode to challenge people, but to have a more easily scalable challenge, right? So if you want to really challenge yourself, you can ratchet up to 10. Although I would say that there was, at least initially, a kind of a communicated to us by the devs that above R6, 7, certainly R10, like, you should just expect to die. Like, this should not, at least, it's something you would have to work up towards. So in that frame of mind, does Reaper meet its design goals?
So you've laid out the design goal as to be challenging, and at some point the DM is trying to kill your character.
Sure.
So that's what my impression of the design goal was, and to that extent, yes, but it's uneven. So, for example, there are quests out there that you can do on R10 and not die, but there are other
Okay.
quests that you can't do on R10 because you will die. So, I think the design goals are achieved in in some dungeons, but not in others. So it's uneven.
I kind of agree with what you say, but like for me, the whole concept of dying in DDO is so like it's not like death in real life. Like you're gonna be a soulstone. My thing is it incompletable when you die? And most of the time, it is still completable when you die. Um, you know, whether through gibbers or whatnot, or through cakes, or most of the time, I make sure to die near to a shrine. So I at first, let's say for me, for a month, it will serve its purpose, being difficult. And this is just my personal experience. I'm not saying anyone who's watching or anyone here that they should have a breeze after a month of Reaper. I'm I'm just I guess I'm an exception. I don't know. I'm not trying to brag either. But after that initial month, it really got easy. Uh, but like I said, a lot of it's not working as intended. Charming mobs, the mobs are supposed to become non-reaper mobs when you charm them. And I go for charisma casters a lot. So typically, charming is part of the repertoire, right? So when you have a bunch of reaper strong mobs on your side, uh, it kind of changes the dynamic when you have what's trying to kill you on your side for a couple minutes or seconds even. So I feel like the stratagem changes when you're in Reaper mode compared to Elite, when you can just blitzkrieg right through a group of mobs, and then now you kind of have to just work with the dungeon. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I would say though, like in response to at least one of the things you said, the idea that the stratagem changes, I think that's indicative of the design goals working, because you have to, like, one, use strategy, because there's a lot of quests, right? Like, perhaps our strategy, shall we say, is lackluster, and people are just cruising through stuff on Elite, so there wasn't really much going on there. So I think that the idea that you have to kind of change your strategy and adapt your strategy and really leverage knowledge of the quest or the mobs and stuff like that, I think that's kind of indicative of at least a partial success of achieving design goals of challenging a party in a group and making them approach these quests in a slightly different manner than maybe they would on hard or elite.
Yeah, I believe to quote Severlin, Reaper mode is here to reward people for paying attention
Mm-hmm.
and to punish people who aren't paying attention. And so, really, what that speaks to me, which works with me, is that I'm a person that likes to think on his feet. I have a strategy going into this room, but depending on the Reapers and champions that are in this room, which is different every instance that you're in of the same dungeon, you have to be able to flee to just change foot, change strategy at like just a moment, a glance of a room, and you're like, okay, this isn't gonna work like A, so we gotta go B with the plan, you know?
Voodoo, what are your thoughts on this one?
With I could spend a lot of time parsing this out and picking at all the different little pieces. Instead of doing that, I'm going to say, generally speaking, yes, that it meets its design goals, generally speaking. And there's also another behind the scenes part of that I want to mention, and that's that it added a big hamster wheel for us. Because
Sure.
the devs, while they're not, going to use those terms, they want hamster wheels for us to keep us going, to keep us engaged. You want to work up and get your Reaper eyes, and then get your Reaperling, and then get your Reaper wings. I mean, here we are over 2 years into Reaper mode, and how many people do you know that have their wings? It's not like the whole server's running around with wings. There's still very few people on Sarlona, for example, that have their wings. I just got mine like a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still a goal for people, for a lot of people. They want to get that. And here we are, like I said, over 2 years into it, and people are still on that hamster wheel. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, right, we're playing a game, so are people having fun doing Reaper mode is almost kind of like a very solid baseline, right? And it's, I would say, people are having fun in Reaper, or a lot of people are. And I almost kind of, and I think this is a kind of a good way to kind of transition into a different kind of idea here. It almost seems like maybe it's too successful, right? Like, and this dovetails into a lot of other kind of existing problems in the game of the ever widening gap between a new player and someone who's been around for a long time and or taking a break and stuff. But I almost kind of wonder, do you guys think that maybe Reaper mode is maybe a little too successful in the sense that people tend to now only run Reaper? Maybe they're a little bit more constrictive of their level ranges that they're running in. Do you see that kind of impacting the game almost like it's a victim of its success?
Unquestionably. I mean, if you have brand new players, and they look at the LFMs, and if you look in, much of the time, the LFMs are just telling us which Reaper level they're running it on. Well, if you're a new player and your tunes are suboptimal to say the least, and you don't understand much about the game, and you're forced to run in Reaper, you're just going to get your butt handed to you, and that's not fun. And
Mhm.
so you've bifurcated the player base into the old timers and the people with all the different lives and all the Reaper points, versus the new players that don't have that stuff and don't have the experience. And you've made the D&D itself is a very, very high learning curve as it is. And so it was already hard for new players to get into it and understand all the different nuances of Dungeons and Dragons version 3.5 and so forth. Now with Reaper, you've only made it harder for them. And this, I'm not saying anything new. This has been
Sure.
expressed on the forums, many times. And I've never ever seen an adequate response, or really any response to that particular point about splitting up the player base, the way that Reaper has done.
I think that the funny thing about the history of this game though is like Reaper is just another example of that, right? Like reincarnation and past lives did this long before Reaper mode. Uh, I'm kind of at the point where I think if you're a new player, probably the best thing to do is to try to find a static group, and experience the game in that way. So you're kind of playing with people that are kind of at that same level, as opposed to, pugging to find that the people that are kind of in the same spot as you are, or at least close enough to really let you have fun, is really hard, I think.
It's
It is
super hard.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find it to be the most dramatic romance story is finding a stack. See, like the group that I'm in, we're all very equal on a lot of levels. We have the same amount of employment, the same amount of free time, the same. We are pretty much the same, just with slight differences. I have more hair than Voodoo, etc. and so forth. But it's so hard to find someone with the right work schedule and the right sleep schedule and the right dedication to DDO to fit yours, like let alone more than one other person to get. And so I feel like that's actually the biggest problem for newer players, or even intermediate, or whatever the word is for slightly not newer players, to get into higher Reaper modes, is finding people who are like-minded that can stay static or some semi-static with them. And with Reaper Life seasons 1 through 3, we get a lot of comments going like, "Oh, I wish I had friends like that," and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I step back and I'm like, yeah, we would like to see you do R5s, but if your reality is R3 or R2, then you know go get it. That's just the plate you're dealt with. Eat your cake.
Any strata or spectrum of difficulties is going to parse out the player base. And that's not a unique phenomenon to Reaper mode. Reaper mode just added 10 new difficulties. And, I do see elite and hard LFMs on Sarlona, it's not all Reaper. But something that Nimvind and I say a lot in our live streams and our videos is that we all play this game to have fun, and whatever that means to you, you can play the game however you want to play. You're paying to play this game, and you play it the way that you want to. And so if you just want to solo and do casuals and normals, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to run elite, that's great. If you just want to do R1s at elite streak level, that's fine too. Like everybody can play it the way they want to. And I've never seen the LFMs as a limiting factor to my fun. I know a lot of people love to point at the LFMs and say, well, there are no groups in my level range. Well, start a group. There's so it seems like for some people that's such a barrier, like this idea that they could start a group doing whatever they want to do. uh, it almost doesn't even seem like it's an option, but anybody can do that.
It does kind of have this negative though. If it puts you in charge of a group, and if you've spent all day at work in charge, maybe it's not something you want to do. Yeah,
I understand that.
There's some, yeah. But like I think it's good what you're saying though, is that this idea that run the game you want to run. I do want to. So we'll close this week's section of this. If you listen to this live, we're going to keep going for quite a while. But I want to throw something out here, and I want to kind of get you guys' opinion on this. Do you think Reaper mode promotes a better system or a better difficulty system than what we had before? And what I mean by that is, if you think about like right before Reaper mode came out, if you think about those quests, like the Multitude of Menace chain, Archon's Trial chain, do you think it would be fair to say that the devs were ratcheting up the difficulty on Elite, and then thereby making that difficulty less accessible to other players before you got into Reaper mode, whereas after Reaper mode, the quests on Elite are easier and thereby more accessible to a wider variety of players? Did I explain that in a way that makes sense?
I really hadn't thought of that. So the Elite before Reaper mode was released is harder than the Elite modes that were released after Reaper was released.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the way the game is.
But that's your point. That's what you're asking us.
Yeah. Do you think that helps? I think. Let me put this. I think that's kind of a take in the column of yes, Reaper is achieving its design goals. Right? Like you're giving more spread for those difficulty levels. Because we found this on DDOCast Splat, right? Like there are quests that are significantly harder to run on R3 or Elite than some of the later design quests.
I do find that a lot of the newer content is built around the new meta, the new past lives, the new races, the new classes, the new builds, the new enhancements. So with that in mind, let's say that you haven't played this game for 5 years and you load up your favorite main character from like 2012 or whatever, and you try to jump into one of those quests, you're gonna have a hard time. But for me, I feel like Elite in general, or the old difficulty system is really old. It's older than the TR system, and because of that, they had to change a lot of things. Like they even nerfed some Thunder Forge abilities because it it, it, it Elite just gotten so much easier, and at certain points, R1's easier than Elite, and I know several would like to change that. So I feel like for a lot of veteran players, the old difficulty system is just non-existent anymore. Then Reaper mode's the new difficulty system, and a lot of new players who hadn't started when Reaper mode started uh, have lost the ability to catch up with everyone in Reaper mode, and they should look at the old difficulty system. But the people who started or were around when Reaper mode started had the same level. Like I came back to the game 3 months or so after repromote started. So I was technically a couple months behind most of my server when it came to getting Reaper points. So it's not impossible, but if you're a year behind, if you just came back this year or the end of last year, you have a lot of grinding to do. And just don't get discouraged. You know what I mean?
I don't buy into the the that Reaper mode makes it harder for newer players to get into the game. I just finished a series where I took my Northwind 2 series, where I took a second lifer that started with basically 0 Reaper points and basically 0 pass lives, and I was soloing R1s, 2s, and 3s all the way to cap pretty much.
Well, but you also
And
have a lot of knowledge built in,
Right.
Yeah,
right?
experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But what I'm trying to say is that success in Reaper mode isn't predicated on having a bunch of pass lives and Reaper points. Those definitely help,
Sure.
but they're not a barrier to entry.
Knowledge.
I mean, what?
Yeah, but the new players just don't. But the new see, this is where I think people are missing missing a very important fact here. I mean, I've been playing the game for 13 years, over 13 years, and I can do R1 with just a brand new character with not much difficulty. But that's because I know all the quests by heart. I know where all the traps are. I know all that stuff. But again, it's it's I see people finding it very difficult to truly put themselves in an accurate way in the shoes of a brand new player. I
I agree.
sorry.
No, no, no. Like I actually been having these moments. I've been telling Voodoo, like I call it veteran player.
Oops, that's awkward.
We might have lost Nimvind.
I think we did.
He's been having connection issues lately, so that's very possible. I like that freeze frame we got on him,
Yeah,
though.
that's a pretty good shot there. So I'm gonna put a button on this
Yo.
one here. So yeah, I think there's, I think kind of jumping off what Nimvind said. Oh, there you back, Nimvind?
He's back.
I hope I'm back. I didn't
You-
freeze up on my side.
Pick up from this point where you were
Yeah.
right here.
All right. What I was about to say is that there's moments where I'm like, what's easy to me is hard to other people.
Mhm.
And then I have to step out of that shoes and realize if I want this game to survive, we need the new players
Yes.
to be you know what I mean? Like we need the new players, and they don't know much, and they can't do what I do, and I'm trying to tell them to do what I do. So like I would like to sit down on top of a mountain for a couple months and just figure out how I can help these new players and keep this game strong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's the magic trick, right? And I think going back to what Arkat was saying a little while ago, like one of the reasons why I don't think Sandstone Games really says a lot in terms of this issue is I don't think they have any answers, or they don't have the answer to this, right? And it's a very difficult thing. I think it's absolutely true. What Voodu was saying was, you don't need a bunch of past lives and Reaper points to go be successful and stuff. I mean, I was part of a group that completed R7 Baba, and I think that character probably had 15 Reaper points, if that. Right? So it's not to say that you can't have success, and you need to have completionists and a whole bunch of Reaper action points to have success at these high difficulty levels. But there is definitely, at the same time, a barrier for entry of, people need to learn the game and, have a character and understand how to utilize different tools that they have available to themselves in order to have success, right? Like, you need to,
There's no substitute for experience in the game.
yeah. And
Amen.
probably a more powerful thing that new players don't have is Epic Destinies, which I don't really want to get into a whole lot, but I think there's a huge difference between someone who has all of their Epic Destinies completed and someone who is still working on their first or second Epic Destiny. Like that,
Big time.
I think that
True.
that gap between those two things is probably the biggest there is in terms of power level for a player, and that kind of thing. So, okay, with that, so here's what we're gonna do. We're going to wrap up for this week, and we'll again, if you're listening to this live, we're not done yet, but we'll be back next week to continue this discussion. So thanks for listening. You can join us next time as we continue this discussion. Thank you to Nimvind, Voodu, and Arkat today. Don't forget to check out the High Lords of Malkir. You guys are still posting your raid, teaching raids on the Solana forums, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, through the rest of the spring, we're doing teaching raids for new players every Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Every week's a different raid. I post details in the Solana forum. If you're looking to get into raids and learn raids better, check them out.
And you can check those out too on your YouTube page, so you can look at you don't have to be a part of the actual run to be able to experience that and get that knowledge. Because like we said, experience is a big deal, and especially when you start talking about raids and some of these harder mechanics that are out there. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOCast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. You can also find show notes, past shows, and more on our website. You can also find us on Twitter, at DDOCast on Twitter. If you'd like to join the discussion, I think this is a fun one to join. You can leave a comment, or you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your test level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.